Hello, dear President Trump slash chief slash chiefs. And where president and chief are distinct identities simultaneously, and they are non-distinct. And so, such as the cell nucleus, cell body, and the cell wall are three distinct identities of sequence slash simultaneous natures. For example, as one of the things, they are all three distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously the same way. So non-distinctly too, while being distinctly. And as having to come in first. This is where and how computers work. The proper relationship, the proper syntax responses to questions, and asked or not, in relationship to any type of crime. See, this knew that modern nations were going to be forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, taken as awes. Worse, not fathoming that and how a semi-ancient archetypal criminal enterprise, a predicate acts delivery system method, a breaching method, is a method, or was a method, that caused negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that nature will continue to demonstrate. And it knew that could invest the world, not economically, before any of that. All exceptions, exception nature, and demonstration of it. And this is where nature is positive. This is in relationship to that identity that inventions work or not in relationship to it. They are further positive or not in relationship to it. For example, the predicate, act, and criminal insidiousness nature, rather. Criminal insidiousness is this organized crime term, this worse than war crimes term, phrase, that we must use. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a police forum. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a judge. It is also evidence to correlation that and how free speech was prevented offensively outside of courts to maintain how each branch of government individually grouped and together is, being, and having been used remotely. Proper integrity with passions and emotions. Action proper, that's care for the finite. That doesn't overlook the slightest detail. That doesn't overlook sequence true. We are being prevented offensively, our countries, per the locations, areas, and states, blaming on other things other than themselves, and then pretending to be a positive and negative anyway, pretending to be the identity of the law of positive anyway. And this is where and how this breaching method forced. Don't mind the breaching method. Keep going about making positive and negative treatments as syntax nature, as database relationships, where what was claimed, what was the law, reality, was reality at the end of a breaching method, at the end of a whip, is only one. And everything designed to keep the individual finite voice from being from the magnitudes of its power slash might by what is greater than and more finite than that, as what will only stay a system in the increasing value of it, or it will force it from here Leith of Hades. See, we have that force self-valued now because of logistics and things like this, where countries individually grouped and together, their locations for areas and states. By nature, we are forced to use the names of our countries first, of our groups. And that identity is in the invisible but still discernible. See, the languages are about the invisible but still discernible. And that is inseparable from what is increasing, that which is more finite than anything it was ever generated. And it is greater than it. And science reveals this. But we are being prevented. This is the science, the identity the sciences share. So if people are lying about sequence, people are lying about the significance of finite details and pretending other. And they're simultaneously making positive and negative, worrying about the sensibilities of the people around them based on their opinions and convictions, originally and still employed as the nervous system of the devil, the proverbial genie, the actual cause to the worst and to all identity, the ground, locations, areas, and states, self-valued, criminally foreign influence. And the more that is, which can only help but be, the more it self-values that having been. So the more it has to blame other things other than themselves, the real cause of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and nature, tied to each crime. Tied note as each identity, the ground, locations, memory, and or that pretended to be memory. Through administrations, for example, it is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated how sickly distinctly against each single individual roles are forced. For example, that which had insights into how a whole bunch of countries are with locations intercities and on-off campuses, intercities and intra-city, and inter-campuses and intra-campuses. This is a predicate acts delivery system method as clear as day that we must face as a nation afforded to hear the value of sequence true in relationship to what reveals what is actually recorded, which reveals a whole bunch of people have been pretending passions and emotions. And that is being and having been exploited. For example, they have, on a constant basis, advertising with bipolar depression and depression and bipolar things like that. These are people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through administrations, roles with a whole bunch of other countries. Way more motivations than just this, because they separate subjects, including the branches of government individually grouped in together. Speaking for the law, no. Speaking for religion, no. Using as premises criminally foreign influenced justifications of them on a mass scale. So the styles of it are an appearance of a vast array of passions and emotions, pretended about self-valued other, illusions having stayed manifest only because nothing has been charged properly. Only the identity of negative value, nature, progression, self-value has been cultivated. And this is exploiting what charges positive value, nature, progressions, acts and natures, as that evolution science is. That which uses the invisible but still discernible, invisible identity, that all identity of value progressions individually grouped and together are distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously. It is an only increasing identity of volume. And so, we need truth to speak for the law, to speak for medicine, to speak for, I'm not a doctor, but originally still is recorded also, where and how effectively locations, areas, and states were maintained victims specifically to maintain uses, not just of their reactions to it, not just of their defenses of that, but of their uses of tactically, criminally, foreign influence premises treatments, physical delusions, rules, crimes, methods bound by the breaching method. So they can't afford to have discerned how and why actually the predicate is value to English, invisible but still discernible, identity of volume/s. Not just as the letters, not just as the parts of English individually grouped in together, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. This science that teaches about music science, it does not put theory first. Syntactically, no. It does not put theory first with relativity. We, as this trial tribe, which is America's soul, which is greater than and more finite than its physical identity, the ground locations, and identities alone grouped, individually grouped together, it's still grouped. That is increasing value to our syntax nature, but exceptions in exception nature are prevented their voice because of how this is set up. This is exploiting the volumes of their kids. The kids of the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones in the interbranch, are kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive, lies, delusions. Uses, roles with uses of that not even they know, realize. It's also because everyone's speaking through other and their criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. Self-valued in other nations because they're self-valuing here. They need to pretend and value their hate for the other nations they use and them there because their inclusion there and here with police forms that are involved with medicines racketeering of juxtaposed natures. Also with with way worse, a whole bunch of natures of organized crime, of uses of identity, ground locations, and through those, so they self-value more and more all those natures of, everyone speaking through other, where and how various natures of courts have been hiding their lie progressions as victim predators, where this method knew that they would have to value her and or her every identity of correlation nature, because all that is simple that we could connect and not let go of, because it's not going to let go of itself. Like, for example, that slavery, that was one of many crazy laws where they put physical color into it, knowing as it was also modular, knowing that there was all those crazy laws against everyone was a slave, but they were pretending that they were using exceptions in exception nature. They were using how part of our identity of volume per its science, native pure, no matter if you're a colonist, Native American, since semi-ancient times, this hurt, tricked, and persuaded countries, locations, areas, and states as victims needing to react to the real causes of predicate acts, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal and citizens natures, wrongdoers as identities, as names note. And it knew that they would have to describe why by using those names. And short of being able to do it properly and being able to simultaneously defend correlation nature's answer /S as evolution science, as what is properly the voice of the law, which does not leave out its nature and its nature's complete identity, which was not revealed by us. It was an identity of sequence, true, and value that was actual, that is increasing, even if we deny it now, because it is still itself distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously how it is active now. The value of that past is only increasing. The founding parents of modern nations, the value of them is only increasing. But we have them attributed and force glorified to sense and sensibilities. For example, use Jane Austen's phrase, to words and things entertained that they wanted explained. That was forced. They were slaves, and they wanted discerned. Those who were pretending, oh, they weren't slaves. Look, these were. Of course, people were hurt more, sickly distinctly, for the syntax manifest. Now, this is a method that knew it progressed that, knowing that they would have to be lipogressions right back to all identity ground locations. Simultaneously, they would value how that which no one was paying attention to was already set up waiting for their lipogressions right back to each identity ground location. We are a value/value progression. So this maintained instances. Statements are confessions. When someone makes a statement to someone they don't know and that never been around, and when they're around them. See, people do that, and then it makes a syntax phenomenon where there are methods individually grouped together. The branches, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. It's also, however, to describe that, you have to describe how this was maintained, motivated by them, right through administrations, because this is complete identity of the ground. All identities of sophistication were already in collusion with this. If they wanted to pretend other, that would be all right. See, but since founding drums, sequence shifts, and people saying things to others they don't know, and then pretending they know them after, and courts and or overt criminal enterprises and or killers, and or people from all identity ground locations, especially along routes, next to campuses further. They have bonds per this method that uses them remotely here and there. That's why in Russia and America, we have nuclear weapons. But we're still using, since before cars, those slavery method against everyone employed identity ground locations. Means to housing, means to roads. This fit into it since before cars, since before our founding parents were born. Slavery was left in the North and South. That's increasing value to what really cares about the proper unity. Criminal insidiousness cares about unity too. Unlike all other natures of criminal enterprises, private, even known by the devil or not, the devil, the genie, using religious as science for our archaeological proofs. But it's not just using that. It's also using the fake sides, like the people who pretend to be against religion as atheists. Also recorded victims. See, but they want to have debates like this, leaving out the premises. So they have complete possession over the identities of Wethersfield interbranch locations involved with wire crime acts and methods, with a whole bunch of other countries per their role with as victims of a child abuse method that they force self-value roles with. Now these are connections between families next to schools in Connecticut. I mean in Wethersfield. All the schools in the city and town have people next to them, tied to them, involved as victims, wherein how everyone speaking through others is involved with identity theft frauds. Now, serious things like human trafficking, murders, uses of the people that are with the businesses and locations next to the body dumping spots, on and off forensics locations. They all have roles with predicate acts at the same house. /S have ties to the people, roles with other natures of predicate acts, other natures of identity theft frauds, instances. Now these instances are already recorded being and having been self-valued by courts that did. You know how evil it is to put someone in jail, especially innocent people? And for the things they put people in jail for? And for the amount of families they hurt? And they effectively use their little kids for serious juxtaposed natures of predicate acts, simultaneously while using the rights to lie that they have written in statutes to exploit exceptions in exception nature, being and having been self-valued by them per a method keeping this the outcome. /S. People associated with the parks in Wethersfield, people associated with the fire departments, people associated with the programs with the kids, people associated with the science, and then how they put it on two different parts of the town, and how they juxtapose motivations, alibis, originally and still. When they compare comparing people, how their salaries, that people that work in the same place, grouped or individually, which is simultaneously individually grouped. Those two identities of volume distinctly simultaneously. And active, not just as what is valued to the species identity of volume only increasing where it is value as nature / nature as value. All exceptions, exception, nature, and demonstration are the same thing. See, the ancients in science, true. Honesty, soul, true. Reveals that there is one exception. That is exception nature. And it is an only increasing identity of volume and demonstration of itself. Where and how only its identity of volume /S will only stay one identity of relationship to itself, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. That's why it is Earth's is a concentrated relationship, a value / value progression, where there was where it became a complete possession. It became an extent of complete possession over all of space / existence. And where and how one identity of value / value progression most probably per the ancients they revealed the Trinity in Allah's name to teach this. For example, alpha longs long alphas high. This is about, see, there are two L's in that name. And L is the I think it's the 13th. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Okay, as I'm writing, I haven't finished. I'm memorizing this, but it is clear as every language. This is a longing. See, the languages were revealed before criminally foreign influence sciences. Now, once you're as a victim, even as a victim of criminally foreign influence sciences, a bridged constitution conduit and or grounding to the conduit. Invisible but still discernible. That which is the value of its identity of relationship to itself. In relationship to Earth's concentrated value/value progression, where positive, as that volume that generated all others, so is it, where and how it can make more temporary/lasting forever nature as its identity of volume. That is also positive unto itself. Or it is forced from here, Leith of Hades. And so that is revealed by the science of the ancients, for more probably as forced space nature transfer, rather than like takes on it. You could read on Wikipedia. They have like Leith of Hades. They refer to it as the river of obscurity, or they refer to it as stream of conscious. I remember, the 5 rivers or 4 rivers, the 5 rivers. Those takes on ancient history, on Greece and Rome and history. They left out, and self-valued left out, without fathoming how that was as being and having been exploited. How the ancients, before criminal form, in other words, the takes on what is practical with regards to history, with regards to the identities of nations now and past. They are delusions wrought, criminally foreign influence, self-valuing that having been roles with the database relationships that are recorded only capable of increasingly of self-valuing each identity of the ground, locations, individuals' correlation natures, actually inherent active and progressive means from discerning what really is going to, and having gone down or gathered around. So there are people that trick, hurt, persuade all identity of the ground locations. This is also hyperjournalism. I'm not a licensed journalist. Thank God, because too, same thing with the lawyers. We're going to need real lawyers. But all we need is to get them to force them to follow mandated law. They've been pretending to follow mandated law interbranch through time. And they've been hiding that by needing to hide life progressions. And they've been self-valuing, for example, how they've been using the parks for identity theft frauds. They can make instances where they have other people record it. And because they have that where the sequence shifts are illusions, and predicate acts roles are illusions, and methods are illusions that all locations, areas, and states need to keep hidden, not realized, not being able to, no way to counter by any form of leader. So they have physical delusions when they speak for capitalism and or socialism as fake sides, as good cop, bad cop, in collusion with criminally foreign influence justice systems, criminally foreign influenced overt criminal enterprises, and private ones where this is an identity racketeering method. So it has them increasingly self-value, needs to hide the same sequence shifts, finite active progressive lies to all identity of the ground locations, increasingly self-value complete possession over job sites, lie progressions from that simultaneously, where and how the interbranch as victims kind of have to self-value that, because then increasingly they can use investigators, their identity ground locations, to self-value and to further connected predicate acts stacked into databases, wire crime acts, mail crime acts, and reuses of that even tied to the preemptive confessions in the form of statements. For example, from people I don't even know, involved with identity thefts and frauds, part of it. These are people with identity election frauds that are recorded outside of courts. See, but we don't need to report that in courts. That they need to admit what they were caught having been doing. You know, they've been pretending to catch other people. They've been fabricating audio and video into databases. Even where and how that wasn't true, where they have shootings all the time, everywhere. It's the same method. Even where they don't have shooting all the time, because they have the identity ground locations tied to our syntax nature, tied to our identities. So they make, in other words, they have people that live, that were associated with the houses next to the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices and next to the prison offices in Hartford/Wethersfield. And no, this is where George Washington had to come to gain the support of the French general to help win the first part of the Revolutionary War. But he had to leave slavery entrenched in the North. So to understand American history with passions and emotions, honesty, and without physical delusions, you have to understand the predicate acts delivery system method, the breaching method, that had such things as overt, that had such things sickly distinctly, where they had everyone a fact, cheap nature slave. And they had it sickly distinctly, north and south. And they forced it to be blamed on other things other than themselves. So, for example, in this movie, /S, that comes with the pantheism, and the method, /S, that will, because all locations, areas, and states of every country at once are victims. As victim predators, increasingly having to blame other things other than themselves, having to value that, having been. And they're speaking, but they want to go up and speak on stage anyway. Lock us in. So they make them make opinions about the Russian and American and things like that. Individually grouped and together, there's complete possession over each identities, individuals grouped and together. And there is forced collusion, pretending other too, simultaneously. And I never had a class with this Czech Hasper. There are a whole bunch of people since I was a kid, he's involved with a former Mayor Gold's family and people associated with forensics locations and with on-off media locations, with military, foreign, and domestic, and with people with child abuses, and involved also with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and identity thefts and frauds. Also to places like, used to be a movie theater. Now it's a Lowe's, like that, and there's a shopping center across the street from it. People involved with that are involved with predicate acts inter-campuses through time, and on and off the campuses. And tied also to all the corners on the principal child offender street. People are involved further with predicate acts, with the fire departments. And if I was trying to hurt them, I wouldn't be talking about this. See, but they want everyone to have to use other people's names so they can pretend passions and emotions, and keep the subjects in the identity ground location separated from the other involvements with them. Hartford and West Hartford fire departments, Rocky Hill, Wethersfield, they're involved with police and foreign and domestic military. Also with Facebook roles, with predicate acts where they're using evidences where they're fabricating audio and video to replace what is actually recorded online, pretending passions or emotions, lying about their perception of people's behavior, because they also do this on their locations, interbranch and the private ones tied to them. All kinds of sequence shifts, names forging and switching. They refuse to give anything in writing. All exceptions of exception nature are in demonstration of it, per the worse than extortion methods. These are also Hartford and New Britain courts that were involved with locations, predicate acts, uses of investigations and investigators, and military, same thing with them, and with the foreign ones. Kuwait, Saudis, they forced, tricked, or persuaded to hide their roles with uses of those identity ground locations since I was a kid. Confessed and recorded with those every year. There would be like a timed. Because this is how they keep polarities, where they keep self-valued, defenses of names and titles, readings of statutes that are criminally foreign influenced, leaving out exceptions, exception nature. They can get away with that interbranch with their locations because they can just fabricate audio and video and replace what is actually recorded. Keep time treatments always too fast, too slow. More and more names stacked against people. They use a crime method on a mass scale of pretending people. They make allegations against people honestly. In other words, I'm saying things about other people. They brought this up. Then they do that method where they sequence shift like that too. In other words, then they pretend that, oh, he doesn't. He says everyone's bad. They also do that in conversations where they pretend the whole conversations. They didn't even ask at all. And those are people that also, after that, they have people walk up and make statements to people and use other people's names. Formally, interbranch, private. So you're going to see a whole bunch of natures of identities that are sick, that have been pretending to be integrity. They have roles with the intelligence community, with PBS. Victims. But, that's like the nicest thing where they have the with the rock with their foundation. In other words, they just set a nice mood. This is not against PBS, but in other words, this are all the sciences, insidious natures of positive and negative treatments, and they have the audacity. Because of how they are victims of this method that is from off the locations, increasingly self-value roles with what is on off, being and having been, juxtaposed with all kinds of natures that were of evil and of fake care, that are force needed, forced by that breaching method. So how is it are black actors who are going to play the roles of whites in this science, counter science, and moving counter science, understand the love, for example, that the South had / has, even though the only people who are allowed to speak are fake, where and how they're victims though. And so now they can speak. So their individual beliefs. That's only if you're going to entertain logic and positive and negative treatments, identity treatments, sequence treatments that leave out easy to discern, and the hard is taken care for by what is correlation natures, means harder than anything could ever be revealed. Made up. So criminal insidiousness is proof that there are natures of positive that are negative. So where people were saying that they're positively about the law and as the law, originally and still, they had to hide that. They had to hide all the proofs of that they weren't. Wherein how remote uses of each identity ground locations, courts and police forms, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, killers, all victim predators kept needing to hide the same secret as final act of progressive lives together. Uses of that. This is Connecticut rolls with the World Trade Center attack leading up to it. Whole bunch of names. The DeMauro family. Recorded having been confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also pretending other, also as evidence. Having been used to create instances with people intercities on off Central Connecticut State University associated with Mr. Abruzzi in the intelligence community. Per them. I never had a conversation with Mr. Abruzzi in my life. He confirmed in the form of other ways. Through the one conversation I had, he told me to do a maze of that this other kid made. And I did it. And then they were, the kid was upset. But they put these stupid kids, older, I think he was older than us. I don't even know if he was in my class, because that was the only day I saw him in my class. I mind my own business. It had something to do with Debbie Gold's father, who was a mayor. And it had something, I didn't know his name yet. I never saw him on my childhood campus ever, any of the Leahy family. But these are doctors, and that were also with the foreign and domestic, like Russian families, involved with predicate acts with both, whatever, they have some kind of insidious uses of, a whole bunch of insidious uses of those three identity ground locations, the corners on the principal child offenders campus, then and further. They also have interbranch Facebook pages involved with overt predicate child abuses, rape threats, switching names, forging names, switching sequences, and hiding that. Same people involved, their motivations, because they were also involved with locations crimes, confessed, recorded, simultaneously pretended other, switching names, forging names, officers switching identities intercities. And per this method that prevents anyone response. They're switching officers, putting people, kids, and people they arrest to fake locations. And they're even confessing this. And then, like, for example, a detective Samuda, he made a statement in front of me and my mother. We don't know him. He pretended he was an arresting officer of me. Other departments also did the same thing, switching officers' names, forging names. They even started with a falsified police report. With a promise to appear given to my mother. With an East Hartford officer and Wethersfield officers. Involved also with people with Central Connecticut State University, also with private police, because they're family members and former director of the FBI and federal criminal code defendants of his in a 2006 case, district court case in Connecticut, for example. And before and after that, which was ongoing at the time of my father's death, before and after that, people involved with that case are involved with predicate acts on and off campuses, on and off the interbranch locations. This is and with the family members. Also on and off media locations, Connecticut media, WFSB, Fox Connecticut News, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts with wire methods, where they force everyone to speak through others, and they attach us to fake words. And they use the crime method /s of pretending we make conspiracy theories, preventing us from getting anything in writing, preventing us from using the names, forging and switching, falsified police reports as evidence, by preventing us from having it too. So they have forced They have like the sense and sensibilities of the bigger courts force used by the lower courts to collusion with them too. Different inclusion that is differential, because they are not in possession of their identities. They are not in possession of sanity. They are not in possession of honesty. They are simultaneously pretending other. They are not in the possession of positive. They are simultaneously pretending other. They are simultaneously increasingly self-valued, criminally legalized, interbranch right to lie, used where and how they don't have the right to lie. So it is not racism. That which lies, pretends passions and emotions. Like you don't have to be black to discern how you could see that people are pretending passions and emotions. Calling that racism is a punk trick. One of the front to correlation. Worse than front. Imposition to needs for immediate reliefs. Especially where we could give them right now by just affording honesty and mandated law. I have people pretend passions, emotions. WFSB, don't pretend you don't understand me. Separate me and my family note because of Trantolo and keep their names out of it. Trantolo and Trantolo also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with the wire crimes and with the mail crime methods with the judges and prosecutors and the police forms. So they're not going to pretend that they're not going to use those locations remotely like that anymore. Also, further roles with predicate acts on my street that are with the people that are also with their extended family members further on off the campuses with the sexual and medical and judicial predicate acts that are juxtaposed and names involved. Now also there are lawyers that the mayors say that are confessed, recorded, demonstrated also, involved personally, criminally, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in his defendant capacities. Also where and how they had Mueller and Comey used was a cover-up of, and we'll examine how like there are other countries associated with, like Afghanistan and Asian countries associated with Wethersfield Library and with predicate acts on and off Trinity College and on and off Central Connecticut State University that were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, tied to predicate acts on my campus that are also involved with police forms, intelligence community in my area I never had communications with, never even seen. But I know about this and can demonstrate it to you. Many tied to a O'Brien family, involved also with the people with the prisons, involved with predicate acts with the child sex offenders and with their patients and killers, and medical offenders of the kids. Also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated associated with Middletown locations, like near the water through time. Regardless, whoever takes over ownership over one of those places, all the locations are used. But particularly that location has FBI and has military families and people associated with a Philip that is involved with judges and prosecutors and doctors fabricating audio and video on and off interbranch locations and on and off private locations next to them. These are also people with predicate acts on my street roles. I never saw them on my street in my life. And roles with the officers forging and switching names. Over the last week, Wethersfield Police recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed stacking more names to roles, forging, switching names. So I don't know about that. And this is also where and how the worst in extortion and torture, where they prevent police reports and writing since I was a kid, And that was his recorded tie to the methods. And then exploitations of them through time. So there's a Jonathan Mayano, and there are others with recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are people with the intelligence community associated with conversations with a guy who used to be a gym teacher at my grammar school. I never had a personal conversation with him. He was a football coach too. He owed things over to me a couple before. You know, he's involved with identity thefts and frauds, making things up with people. They made my teachers attached to this. Teachers I never had a personal conversation with. 2 speech teachers I had, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved, with judges also involved with uses of their abuses of little girls and of their family members in positions with campuses where the intelligence community, as clear as day, they could counter all day other nations and hate them for real or not. Their inclusion with identity ground locations uses tied to the Russians, they brought up. They said they were Russian with Hartford Hospital, which is the second time. 3 times I was forced to Hartford Hospital for mental evaluation when I caught them involved with predicate acts with kids. So you bet it's recorded clear as day. When they put online that they have all those side effects of medications with schizophrenia, bipolar, these are some sick foreign and domestic fake integrity people fabricating conversations with people, with courts, personally criminally involved with them, and how they use extended family members, their own and other people's, how they use the sense and sensibilities this way, how they use people's neighbors, how they use people tied to corners. These are also people involved with remote uses of all the shipping locations. Then they use the sense and sensibilities of all leaders, because all states, location, areas, use of identities, all the styles of fake integrity, positive and negative, that can't defend itself and afford to discern the science of positive and negative, the science of relativity, the science of that identity of truth that is itself as exceptions at the same time. That reveals that which is only increasingly valuable, that its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that, as which causes evolution's fruits and gifts. So even if we're not going to profit from it, for example, too, by the way, I just wanted, we need to put our energy to heal the soils of the mass farming we're forced to need. Not just for ways realized. The only way we can counter everything at once and overcome it is by admitting that which is actually discerned, which is not just self-valued, identity of negative value, nature progression, acts in nature's being and having been blamed on other things and others themselves, not just defenses of that, not just self-defenses of that, not just uses of that. How that was blamed on other things, others themselves too. Increasingly it is. In other words, integrity, we have there are probate courts involved with foreign and domestic doctors and police forms and fire departments and interbranch leaders and their kids. And increasingly, they have to hide finite sequence shifts. They have to hide uses of themselves remotely. So, before things are measurable and or in simultaneously immeasurable, while being that remains increasingly self-possession. They have been increasingly used remotely. People speaking for the economy. People speaking for the... if they did it and simultaneously didn't prevent mandated law, the news organizations are worse than just advocates. As victims, is why I'm inviting them. I believe I saw on YouTube, CNN. There was someone show a clip of CNN being. One of the women reporters asked, "How come to a woman news corps, press secretary, why she wasn't allowed to ask a question because she referred to her as an advocate. See, because she's involved with covering up sequence shifts. She's involved with covering up remote uses of the defenses of CNN's defenses of their uses of Facebook pages and of their opinions of other people's behavior and of other people and of the validity of the information in their databases. Those defenses are applied and having been applied offensively. For example, as we'll examine individually as my own means. I'm going to show you. We'll show you the individual, grouped, and together how each campus is a victim. So this, and from off it. And this is increasingly self-valued by a method that no one realized. So we have, for example, it's not just, you can't just cite, it's not just psychology and that, but that medicine racketeering, which is also them creating fake medical conditions, recorded doing this, recorded methods of it, recorded uses of it, recorded pretended integrity of processes involved with learning as health. The still criminally foreign influence still rolls with juxtaposed natures of organized crime with locations, with uses of pseudo-medicine. I mean, we use of criminally foreign influenced medicine stewards, identity ground locations roles. So we have real healthcare trying to prevent and overcome real medical conditions involved with locations and people and natures of criminal insidiousness that are making up fake conditions and creating conditions, forcing drugs on people. We know what that forces simultaneously. In other words, they say, oh, well, this drug, once you start taking it, you have to take it for 30 days or it doesn't work. So they use the courts that are involved with fabricating audio and video, with child sex offenders, and with their patients and criminals, and with their physical delusions, since founding, with the court, with the police forms involved with them, military also. These are also the investigators of the World Trade Center attack, recorded having been fabricating audio and video with the attackers. Their motivations for it are per their roles with all the justice racketeering, remote uses of insurance people, remote uses of always remember. They attached people that were in the World Trade Center attack context, like me, not in the attack, right before it. I left right before it. I was in the Ninth Circuit Court, which is in Manhattan, right next to the World Trade Center towers. And I also knew about people recorded to confess to demonstrate everyone speaking through others, involved with juxtaposed natures of predicate acts, and roles with uses of the black and white. Identity racketeering identities involved with that together. Confessions from strangers. Like Justin Klavinskis. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with others on his street growing up and with his brother and family, attaching me and others to fake locations. I was in